Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, of course, host of the Ross Tucker football podcast, Westwood One NFL analyst. What do you make of what Tony Dungy just tweeted out about replay?
Well, I feel like, Dan, they've done a better job the last couple years in terms of what a catch is or is not. I feel like I have a little bit better of a grasp of it, but there are always going to be cases that are very difficult. And when those cases come on and you're not quite sure, it's tough to tell, then you keep the call on the field. You know, I'll tell you what I don't like, Dan, and I feel like I'm the old guy saying this. That Notre Dame Clemson game, and I know we're talking NFL right now, but we've gotten to the point where we're replaying 7 plays in like a 10-minute period. I mean, I was so annoyed. It kills the game. It kills the flow of the game. I know we want to get it right, but when we're replaying seemingly every other play, I mean, that game was like 5 hours.
Yeah. And overtime was brutal with the replays. Just brutal. You know what? Let me start there. We have Brian Kelly coming up top of the hour. More likely to play in the national title game, Notre Dame or Clemson?
Clemson, because even if they win the rest of their games, they're going to go. They're going to get sort of the Trevor Lawrence didn't play mulligan. I still think they'll be one of the top 4 teams. I still think they'll go. And while I was impressed with some of the things that Notre Dame did, I just don't envision them being able to win back-to-back games against an Alabama type of team. You know, Notre Dame has more talent than they've had, Dan, but you can still see, like when the Clemson wide receivers are in open space or covered, Notre Dame still doesn't quite have the perimeter speed that the truly elite teams have. They typically have a better O-line, maybe even a D-line that's comparable, but they still don't quite have the same level of overall depth and speed with the skill kids.
Let me get to Jim Harbaugh, and then we'll go to the NFL, because I always thought Jim Harbaugh was a college coach. I just thought that he had fun. He was a rah-rah, corny. He could blend in. He could be one of the guys, and maybe not relatable in the NFL. Now you get that sense, or at least a little bit of that sense, of maybe the next job is going to be in the NFL, not college football. What do you make of that?
I think it's likely, and I think it's because he's never really been able to solve the quarterback dilemma at Michigan. And the irony is, is that's why he got so much credit in the first place. You go back to Josh Johnson at University of San Diego, Andrew Luck at Stanford, then, of course, with the 49ers, he resurrects Alex Smith's career, Colin Kaepernick, all of that stuff. But yet at Michigan, I mean, they've tried transfers. They've tried all kinds of guys. He has not been able, and I actually think this kid, Joe Milton, has a chance, but he has not been able to get consistent performance from that position. And here's the thing, Dan, it's not talent. I follow the recruiting stuff closely. They recruit top 10 recruiting class every year. You look at the amount of guys they've had drafted, the amount of guys that go to the combine for Michigan, it's 15, 20 a year. I mean, they're pumping out a lot of talent. They just haven't quite been able to get a quarterback that can play at a Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields type of level.
Pac-12's playing at 9 a.m. local time. How desperate is the Pac-12?
I don't understand this at all, Dan. I'm so glad you brought this up. I think Paulie will be with me on this one. I have said for years, Dan, that one of the group of 5 conferences or an FCS conference, like, something like with Delaware, William and Mary, Richmond, they should play at 9 a.m. or at least 10 a.m. or 11. Look, the Ivy League game of the week, let's bring it back to my dudes. The Ivy League game of the week, every Saturday at 9 a.m. You can't tell me that there aren't people that wouldn't rather watch that than watch the pregame shows. I think playing at 9 a.m. is fine. I don't understand how it benefits the Pac-12. I mean, if they're playing at 9 a.m. on the West Coast, well, okay, that's noon on the East Coast where there's already a bunch of good ACC games, Big Ten games. I don't really see how that benefits them. If I'm Pac-12, I try to own maybe Friday night at 9 o'clock, Saturday night, 9 o'clock. I try to get the late window. They're not going to do any damage in the early window. There should be an East Coast conference, though, either group of 5 like the Sun Belt or an FCS that play, or at least 10 a.m. Even if you do 10 a.m., that's 2 hours where you would be the only game on TV, and people still would prefer live sports over a pregame show, no matter how good College Game Day is.
He's Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman and host of Ross Tucker Football Podcast and Westwood One NFL analyst. The Saints last night blew out the Buccaneers because...
Wow. It's not even a question. It's a sentence you want me to finish, and it's because they kicked their butt all over the field. You know, that's one of those games, Dan, where I am very curious to see whether it's just a 1 week flush it, doesn't really matter. You know, sometimes that happens. Or is it a game where the Saints are able to really benefit from that and carry that forward and go on a run here? And conversely, does it affect, you know, the Bucs' confidence? Do they go in the hole after this? I know this, though. There are years, I think it was 1994. You know, I grew up outside of Philly as an Eagles fan. I want to say in 94, and you guys can look this up, the Eagles went to San Francisco on like a Monday night game and beat the Niners by 20. They smashed them. The Niners still won the Super Bowl by 30 points. I mean, it didn't matter, but that happens every once in a while. And I think that what's really important moving forward is how both of those teams respond from last night. I've been waiting for that Saints defense all year. I mean, they have talent everywhere. I don't know why they haven't been able to play to that level that they did last night. That was awfully, awfully impressive.
40-8 was the final score. That was that Monday night game of the Eagles.
Oh, my God. Was it that bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. And think about that. And
Charlie
the 49ers
Garner.
went on to be awesome.
Charlie Garner, running back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good, I'm glad, guy, you have some quick stats, guys. Was that McLovin or was that Pauly? I don't know. But anyway.
That's Pauly.
Well, here's what I would say about it, though, Dan. It's a good lesson for everybody this morning to not take any one result and try to, I know we're in the media and you got to talk about the next day, but to not take any one game, especially middle of the year, and try to extrapolate that for what's going to happen the rest of the season.
But Ross, when did we start this with, we got to start talking about the MVP like it's the Heisman after the month of September? Who's the MVP? I don't remember doing that until recently. It felt like, hey, if Brett Favre wins it or Peyton wins it, and we'll just wait until the end of the season. It feels like this is almost week by week who's going up and who's going down in the MVP race. Why is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it does seem like it started the last couple of years. I don't remember that when I was playing. I don't know. I guess, Dan, because it's easy. It's an easy thing to talk about. Who's the MVP? Who's going to win the Super? I mean, it's something that you can take the temperature of every week. And now Russell Wilson had 4 turnovers. Mahomes didn't. So now Mahomes is in the lead. I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I've never cared that much about the MVP. I feel like for whatever reason, the Heisman is a much bigger deal than NFL MVP. I don't know why that is, but I've always been more interested in the Heisman conversation than the NFL MVP one.
Yeah, but it feels like in the NFL, you're going to earn the MVP, whereas in college football, it's, criteria. Who am I voting for? Best player on the best team. I love voting for the Heisman, but it doesn't feel like it's as scientific as maybe the NFL is.
I think that's fair. And I think something that's a fun exercise is to go back through the Heisman winners over the last 20 years. And you look at some of them and you're like, wait a minute. How did Mark Ingram win over whoever? How did he win? Because when you go back and I'm not just talking about their NFL careers, you just kind of remember the players in college, and then you look at their stats and you think, how did that happen? And usually how it happened is in November and December, the games that are nationally televised, it's going to be the best 2 or 3 or 4 teams, and it's going to go to the best player on one of the best 2 or 3 teams, even if Andrew Luck was more deserving than I think it was Andrew Luck and Mark Ingram maybe. You look back and you're like, oh my gosh, Andrew Luck carried Stanford to a big win in the bowl. He was a better college football player than Mark Ingram was that year, but Ingram was Alabama's running back and they were the best team.
Yeah, it just feels like they're gaudy stats now for quarterbacks that, there are players who might be The best player in college football may not be Trevor Lawrence. I mean, shocker there, that there might be somebody who turns out to be a better football player in the pros. But if you put up these gaudy numbers, you're on a good team, and you go in the Final Four, you're gonna have a great chance to win the Heisman Trophy. That's not always the case in the NFL.
Well, I think at this point, Dan, I really do. Based on the rule changes at both levels and based on what coordinators have figured out in terms of the RPOs and the zone read and some of the things you can do to really put defenses in a bind, I'd be surprised if there's an NFL MVP or a Heisman winner over the next 10, 20 years that isn't a quarterback.
Yeah.
When's that going to happen? It's not. I mean, look at the top 5 for both awards this year. It's Russell Wilson, Mahomes, blah, 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 maybe Josh Allen or Aaron Rodgers. In college football, it's Fields. I'm not sure, Dan, when the next time we'll have a non-quarterback win either one of those awards, to your point.
Yeah, I'm with you, because let's say Barry Sanders was playing now and rushing for 2,300 yards, which is what he did. Is that enough? And, he wasn't on a national title contender. He was on a good team. Like Delvin Cook at Florida State was awesome, and awesome in the NFL. But you're not playing for a national championship, and it's rare when we single out a running back or a wide receiver anymore, or defensive player.
I mean, Michael Thomas set the record for catches in a season last year on an awesome team, and nobody really. So in the NFL, we've gotten to this point where if you're Christian McCaffrey or Michael Thomas and you have a great statistical season, somehow that puts you in the category for offensive player of the year, but not MVP. But then the MVP is an offensive player, but he's not the offensive player of the year. I mean, we've totally screwed this up. I'll give you another one, Dan. Nobody's talking about Big Ben for MVP because he's coming back from injury. So we've already put him in the comeback player of the year bucket. He's in the comeback player of the year bucket. Oh, yeah, give that to Big Ben or Alex Smith. Don't even talk about him for MVP. It's a joke.
Good to talk to you, buddy. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Always. All right, sounds good.
That's Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman. Ross Tucker, football podcast, Westwood One NFL analyst.